Hello, my name is Tim Eriks, and we're here at the bi-weekly Backdrop CMS virtual user group meeting. We are here to talk today about porting themes from Drupal 7 to Backdrop. I'll give a little bit more of a description of what we're going to talk about after we do our introductions. But let's start with our introductions. Again, I said my name, first name, your name, where you're from, and anything short you'd like to share. And please call on the next person. My name is Tim Eriks. I'm in Deerwood, Minnesota. And it is probably warmer than it is in Jen's house, given that you're in Minnesota right now. So that's saying something. It's actually it's cooling off here. So we've had some pretty nice weather lately. Luke, do you want to go next?
Why not? I'm Luke McCormick, Cell Ear on various thingies. I am a Drupal and other CMS business analyst in San Ramon, California. And I just returned from DrupalCon Europe in Lille, France. So I'm a little jet lagged, but have sort of interesting things that I'd like to spread from that. Let me toss it to Wilbur.
My name is Wilbur Ince. I'm in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and yeah, I'm here to find out about themes because it's something I'm really interested in improving on Backdrop. I'll switch it over to Martin.
I am Martin in the United Kingdom. I'm a web developer, and I do a bit with themes, but I've never even considered porting a D7 theme, so I'm interested just to see the process. And we'll go to Izzy.
Unmute. Hello. Hi, great. I'm glad you can hear me. I just got in from the milk run. I'm Izzy. I'm in Vancouver, BC. That's Canada, you know that. And I'm here because I want to see what I can learn about themes. It sounds to me like Backdrop has made things so easy now that you hardly need to know anything about themes. You just have to know how to plug them into layout. So here I am, ready to learn some more. Jen.
I am Jen Lambton, joining from Oakland, California. I have a lot of experience working on Backdrop themes in two different ways. One, taking a Drupal 7 theme and converting it into a Backdrop theme. And then two, something I want to talk about today is taking a Drupal 7 theme and making it run on your Backdrop site without having to convert it. Very much. So just time-saving ways to get that done.
Hey, as an introduction to this topic, a quick reminder of one of the reasons we're doing this right now is hopefully our colleague Irina will be able to join us today, but Irina has been involved in the planning for a hackathon coming up at BadCamp. Luke, are you planning to go to the hackathon? Do you know?
Oh yeah, I am. I'm actually.
You're helping?
Part of, like a peripheral part of the planning committee. I go to some of the meetings and I've started to become more and more involved. So I'm in on that.
So for those who aren't aware, and because we're recording this, BadCamp has traditionally been a big Drupal camp. That this year they have, instead of doing their traditional camp, they're doing a weekend hackathon. And I'm not going to speak to the details about what's going to happen there, but they're opening it up. Backdrop is welcome to be there and to work on some stuff. Irina has been trying to organize some folks, particularly those in the Bay Area, but also anybody else who might want to come out to participate in this hackathon. If somebody could look up the exact dates of this, it's in about 3 weeks, I think, 2 or 3 weeks. And Irina, who's also very much involved in the Drupal 7 soft landing project, which is helping Drupal 7 sites find new homes, is interested in one of the biggest problems that some site owners are still having converting to Backdrop is their theme. Our migration process can, in a lot of cases, work pretty well in terms of getting the content over, but oftentimes the biggest challenge that people have then is dealing with the theme. And she is hoping to get some work going on, well, figuring out what we can do to make that process easier. And maybe Jen's taken care of that already, and she can find a new problem to solve at Backdrop Live. Or maybe Jen has done some of the work and has a list of a wish list of things she could use help on. I don't know, to make it better, and they could work on that at the hackathon. Again, I'm not sure. We'll find out in a minute. So that our goal is to talk about today what is involved in porting themes. We'll start with the basics, what is involved in supporting themes, and then Jen can talk a little bit about how her Drupal 7 compatible theme helps with that process. And either now or maybe we postpone that discussion till the dev meeting, we could talk about what changes could be made to make this even easier. So I'm going to kind of turn this over to you, Jen. Anybody should feel free to add questions. Jen, can you, and Irina just made it. Welcome, Irina.
Hi, sorry, I'm a little late.
It's okay.
Greg's here too. I don't know. And Andy, if we want to do
Hello.
some more
Sure,
introductions.
we might as well. So Irina, since you're talking now, do you want to do just a quick introduction, and then Greg, and then Andy? The rest of us have already introduced ourselves.
Hi,
We are recording already. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Irina Zaks. I'm a web developer. I work with various CMSs. I work with Drupal. I work with Backdrop. I work with WordPress. And I'm participating in Badcamp Hackathon this year, which will be on November 17 for drinking beer, November 18 for sprints and coding, and November 19 for getting prizes. And I invite everyone who is excited about good, good code to join us. Thank you.
Greg?
Hi, I'm Greg. I'm joining from Greece, usually in Australia, and just generally interested in anything related to Backdrop and any way that I can help.
Andy, are you available?
I'm Andy, Doc Wilmot on the internet, just a Backdrop supporter and fan. Just here to listen to what we can do with Backdrop as usual.
Sure. Irina, do you want to say something quickly about your plans for the hackathon or what you're hoping to do? Before you got here, I suggested that you were part of the reason for today's topic was that you were hoping to work on tools to help make porting themes easier. Can you say anything more about that?
I would like to give a quick, very short intro to my hopes for the hackathon. My original idea was to see if we can find the team of different types of developers who could possibly create better tools for porting themes in a very generic way. So if there's a, with all this AI and ChatGPT and AI tools, my thinking was, okay, I have existing theme, right? It has, it has CSS, it has regions, it has theme is just a theme. And I have my new Backdrop site, and it was okay, I'm going to upload my current theme. Maybe I purchased it for WordPress. Maybe I purchased it for Drupal. Maybe I developed it for Drupal. And then there's some magic tool that will say, okay, all right, these are all the steps, this AI tool, because AI is a hot topic, and inviting students to participate in an AI project is much easier than inviting Drupal to participate in a 10 years old CMS system, which doesn't do this and doesn't do that. It's not super cool. It doesn't have autocomplete. It's just there's a lot of things that are not always present in older systems. So that was my original idea. I don't know if it will happen or not. I am very happy to see that some people are registering. This is great success. And if we can't put together a team that will do this like crazy idea, then we can at least sprint through regular upgrade. So, but I think it would be very interesting if we can't like even finish this. It's not like about finishing. If we can work on this idea, it might be some benefit, even if we don't have finished product. It still might be interesting. I'm not sure what it takes, but yeah, that's yeah.
Tim, you're
You're
muted.
muted.
Jen can talk a little bit about what she's already done on this, but Jen, could you start by just saying what the difference between Drupal 7 and Backdrop themes are, and like what is involved in porting a theme or making it compatible?
Yeah. So there's not a lot of difference between Drupal 7 themes and Backdrop themes. Part of that is because we wanted all of the knowledge that people already had for working in Drupal 7 to translate to working in Backdrop. But we did make a couple of improvements that would help make it easier for people who'd never seen theme development before to get into theming for Backdrop. And those were very similar to the changes we made in Drupal 8's theme system when we were converting some of the preprocessed functions and template files to be more consistent, reuse things that already exist, less magic. So in Drupal 7, there was something called the process layer that most people didn't know existed. We removed it in Drupal 8. We also removed it in Backdrop. So there's just similar stuff. We're trying to simplify the process to make it make more sense to more people. So if you're coming from Drupal 7, you cannot just drop your Drupal 7 theme into a Backdrop site and have it run. There are a couple of things that are significantly different that will make your site very broken. And those are there's two main things of that. One of them is the page template, the file that was named page.tpl.php rendered your layout in Drupal 7. It controlled where your theme controlled where the regions were on your site, and that page placed those regions into specific places on the page. In Backdrop, we don't have any control over where those regions are or what content is in them based on your theme. All of that is controlled by the layout system. Your layout system controls what the layout is of the page, where the blocks go in the layouts. And this was a major change because in Backdrop, we wanted people to be able to change their theme without having to essentially like rebuild their site by defining where all the blocks go and all of the regions on all of the pages. And a lot of themes had very different names for those regions. So trying to figure out what the mapping was from one theme to another was really hard. So we wanted to make that process also simpler for people new to Backdrop, new to building websites. And in doing that, we did have to significantly change the way the page template worked in Backdrop from how it worked in Drupal. So we essentially took that page.tpl.php file that you have in your Drupal site and threw it away. So if you're starting with your Drupal 7 theme, the first thing to do would be just rip out any template file that says page in the file name, and don't destroy it entirely because we're going to need it later, but don't put it in the theme when you turn the theme on. And just by doing that, you should be able to turn your theme on and have a semi-functional site. Now, it won't look right. There'll still be things that are a little silly, might get some PHP warnings, but you should at least be able to run your site. Without making that change, you might not be able to work your site at all. The second major change that we made between Drupal 7 and Backdrop was the removal of this process layer. What the process layer did is it took stuff that was in arrays and turned it into strings. And that's something that you don't necessarily need a whole layer in your theme system to do. There is a simple PHP function, implode, which will take arrays and turn them into strings and separate them with whatever you want. And so we said, rather than that having that be an invisible layer that nobody really understands how to use or manipulate, we're just going to take that and put it directly in the template file. And in general, in Backdrop, anytime there's a function that needs to manipulate your content or your CSS classes or whatever it is, we don't want to hide it from the front end developers. We want to put it where they can see how their content is being manipulated and they can work with it themselves. And so it's all going into the template file. So that's the other major change. There are going to be function calls in your template files. In Drupal 7, they sort of made this separation of like, oh, front end developers don't know how to code. And so we're just going to print variables in the templates. And all of the coding is going to happen either on the back end or in the template.php file. And so those files were supposed to be HTML, CSS only, and no complicated processing. So we sort of flipped that around both in Drupal 8, like people do a whole bunch of coding in the template files in modern versions of Drupal. Same thing with Backdrop. You can do all of that coding in your template files without an abstraction layer. So it's the same thing, just simplified. Same goal, achieved a different way. So in order to take your Drupal 7 template files and make them work in Backdrop, you have to find everywhere that one of these magic functions was called in the process layer and replace it with the equivalent function that you call directly from the template file. So that's often where it says print classes. Classes is an array in Backdrop. You have to say print implode classes. And so there's two ways that you can make this change. One of them is by going through every one of those template files and finding every one of those instances and doing a replace. That can be painful to do manually if you have a really complicated theme with a lot of complicated places where those things might appear, views templates, node templates, block templates. The other thing you can do is take the array that you have in Backdrop and flatten it into classes before it gets to the template file. And then all of your print classes from Drupal 7 will work. And so if you're going to like port your theme to Backdrop, you want to actually change those template files. But if you just want your existing theme to run on Backdrop, it's a custom theme, no one's going to see it, but you can just fix the way classes are organized to match what your template is currently doing. And so the theme that we're going to talk about that's called D7 compatible does that for all of the major templates that existed in Drupal. It does it for nodes, it does it for fields, it does it for blocks. And there are also additional classes that existed in Drupal 7 that were removed in Backdrop because you can now access elements using other selectors that exist in CSS now that did not exist through CSS before. So we were forced to add classes to support that use case. And so in doing conversions of themes from Backdrop to Drupal 7, every time I hit one of these things where it's like, oh, we don't have that in Backdrop anymore, it goes into this Drupal 7 compatible theme to make sure that all of the classes are the same as classes you had in Drupal 7. All of the variables in your template file are in the same format as they were in Drupal 7, so that as much of that theme will just work as it did before. And so that way you don't have to change the names of any files other than your page template. And you don't have to change the way your classes are handled. You don't have to change which functions are called from where. So it just sort of puts all of the stuff that used to be in the process layer into the pre-process layer, which is a place where front-end developers, at least in Drupal, know to go to look to find it. And it'll work the same way as it did in Drupal 7 in Backdrop. So that should handle 90% of your theme. What it doesn't handle is the layout, right? Because this is something that which is the most important 10%, right? Like it's not very many of your files, but it is what controls entirely what your site looks like. And so the way that I handle it is I take that file that used to be named page.tpl.php and I rename it layout.tpl.php. And what I do is then start with that layout file and start removing things that don't exist in Backdrop anymore, or putting them to different places where they are. So the most obvious example is the header in Drupal was something that was always hard-coded in your theme. In Backdrop, the header is a block that you place into your layout. So usually the first thing I do is wherever the header is in that now layout.tpl.php file, I pull it out and I do like print region, whatever, right? So that is now just a region and it prints whatever happens to be in that region. So I'll take that header markup that we took out of that file and I'll put it into the header.tpl.php file. So we're just taking the markup from where it used to exist in Drupal and putting it to where we want it to be in Backdrop. And so there isn't a lot of like rewriting stuff. There isn't a lot of needing to rework your CSS. It's just sort of figuring out how to fit things together so that the markup that you get on your finished Drupal site or Backdrop site is identical to the markup you started with on your finished Drupal site. And I find that to be a fairly painless process. It is time consuming, right? You have to figure out what's different. Okay, I have to put this over here. I feel like we could have better documentation on exactly like how I do it. But the biggest issue with themes is that they are so custom for every individual site that it's really hard to write a solution that's generic enough for all sites. And so I think documenting how I do it for an individual site could be really valuable, because it's like, oh, you know, this site did it this way, and most sites are going to experience this problem, but not this problem. But you are going to run into issues with your site that are not things that anyone else has encountered, because your site is unique. And so you might have a special views template file with a name that no one else has, or you might have, I don't know, other things could come up. And so those are things where, as the maintainer of that Drupal 7 compatible module, if you want more support in those areas, you need to open the issues, because you're hitting the problems that I haven't encountered yet. That theme has solved all the problems I've encountered in 3 websites that I've converted from Drupal to Backdrop, but there are, you know, I've done a lot more than that. I haven't even tried it on some of the other ones, and there are going to be a whole lot more coming through that people are going to encounter more things. So the Drupal 7 compatible theme restores all of the stuff that was in Drupal. If you're just trying to preserve an existing Drupal 7 site, like it's fine how it is, and I don't want to do any more development on it, I just want it to keep existing, I would 100% recommend using that theme, because it'll save you a lot of time. If you are trying to take a living, breathing Drupal site that's constantly getting updates and new features and move that to Backdrop, I would recommend investing in updating your template files to work the way Backdrop wants them to work, because you're going to be adding new features in the future. You're going to be overriding new template files in the future. And now you're going to have this dichotomy of like, some of them have the Drupal 7 style and some of them have the Backdrop style. And then you're going to have to add in a lot of logic to figure out which ones are which way, or you're going to have to spend time taking your modern Backdrop templates and converting them back into the way Drupal used to do it in the past. And I mean, I guess as a development team, your team can decide which way they want to go. But for me, I feel like if I'm trying to maintain something that just was and is going to stay, I'm going to leave it the same. But if I'm going to be actively working on something, I'm going to want it to be in a format where I can benefit from all of the new changes that are coming into Backdrop without having to worry about how to adapt them to work on a Drupal 7 style system. Are there any questions on what I've said so far? Okay, go ahead, Greg.
So we already have a compatibility layer in Backdrop core for Drupal functions, and that can be enabled or disabled. And I imagine that people that build fresh Backdrop sites won't need that unless they're bringing over stuff from a Drupal site or from Drupal in general. And you mentioned that not the entirety, but the Drupal 7 compatible thing also provides a compatibility layer, but for themes, for the whole pre-processed thing.
Yeah.
How come, like it feels that it should be, that portion, that functionality should be in core?
I mean, it's the same reason I just said, where like, if you're going to have a site that you want to keep working on, if you have reset everything back to the way it was in Drupal 7, anything you install new isn't going to work until you take that thing and reset it back to the way that it worked in Drupal 7. And the theming is really complicated, right? Because you have, you know, template files, that nodes, for example, right, that match the type name. And so you can have like 6 types that work the old way, and then you create a new type one day and now it works the new way. It's just, so trying to figure out how to split those so that it doesn't cause problems, I think, is not something that we could have left to core. There are some things like adding the classes back that we could probably do, but that might be really confusing for people who are like, yeah, I converted all of my modules, and then you turn off the compatibility layer and then like your homepage style disappears because we don't have that like page home class anymore. Or page front is what it was. So yeah, there's just stuff like that where we thought about it and it seemed like the risk was higher than the reward for some of the things like the process layer. just because themes they're so complicated and that, you know, they're going to be different as things evolve over time.
thanks.
I do
Yes.
think like there's value in it, obviously, which is why I made the theme that adds the compatibility. But even with the theme, I've set it up as a base theme that you have to create a theme off of, because you're still going to want to decide which template files are using the old style and which files are using the new style. And so having the ability to go in and say like, okay, I'm going to override this node template to work like my new stuff or what have you. You still need to have the sort of the flexibility to do that. So the theme doesn't do anything, any styling or anything. All it does is like rework the markup a little bit and allow you to create your own more customized version of that.
I think Izzy has a question.
Go ahead, Izzy.
Yeah, thank you very much. That was real fast, and I guess you can talk faster than I can hear, but it was very informative. Now, the thing is that what we're talking about here is the anatomy of a theme and dissecting it and being able to maybe automate some of it like you're talking about.
Yeah.
And I like the fact that you're talking about both ways of doing this, either just let the Drupal 7 compatible theme set up the corresponding connections so that it can do the processing of the variables and the processes that are otherwise relied upon, or do like yours demonstrated, how you can actually basically convert things into the way that that Backdrop does it, giving you the future extensibility.
Yeah.
And in a way, what you're doing here is you're dividing off things like appearance from other elements of theming, which is Irina started to touch on it. I made a note of it somewhere here. I kind of just have to reorient myself to where it is, and that is that you've got CSS, which, you know, color and size and font and stuff like that, and regions, which are now basically like layouts. And then you've got other things that are like behaviors of the theme. So grids, which is again like layouts, containers, or animations, right? So some of these things will rightfully belong at the theme level, but many of these kinds of actions are kind of what Backdrop, if I understand, has moved into more of like the into more of the functional layer of the presentation.
So things like grid behavior and slideshows have been in the functional layer for Drupal for a very long time, which is extremely different from WordPress, where all of that stuff lives in the front end. But with Drupal, you install a module to get a slideshow, you build it out of a view, you add the fields for what you want to see in the slideshow. For grid behavior, there you can choose from various different CSS frameworks to handle how your grids work, whether it's Zen grids or Bootstrap grids or Omega grids or whatever it is. So there's always been this sort of separation. It hasn't been official, maybe ever. And even if you look at the way like CSS frameworks work, they also separate like the CSS grid from the CSS aesthetic side. And so Backdrop ships with Bootstrap's grid system to handle its layouts, but it does not include any of Bootstrap's front end styles. So it just took that separation and said, we're going to embrace this, and we're going to take half of the grid system part, and we're going to put that in the configuration module space for Backdrop. And in Backdrop, a theme has become more of a skin. Like it doesn't do anything anymore, or at least it does very little. And what it mostly does is change the appearance. And when we were first working on Backdrop, we did think like, is it important to change the name of what this is from a theme to a skin so that people will have a better mental model of the difference in how a theme in Backdrop is so different from a theme in Drupal. And in the end, we decided that changing the name was going to be make it too hard to port things. But we've ended up with this, you have to have the mental model separation in order to port your theme anyway problem. But yeah, you're exactly right that where you put in behaviors is not in the theme anymore. That doesn't mean you can't do it in the theme. Like the theme has the final say on whatever comes out of your site, right? So if you want to add grid behavior, override grid behavior, add, slideshows or I don't know, infinite scroll or whatever it is, you don't have to do it by installing a module. That's just sort of the default way that most Drupal projects operate, because there's a module for that. And there's a module for that was sort of like Drupal's tagline for a really long time.
Yeah, there's just two things if I might follow up on that. One of them we can come back to in a moment, and it may be very simple. It's to do with other TPLs like Node TPL. So clearly that would be kind of like your default layout for your other pages or whatever it is. But correct me in a moment. The other thing is that in doing this, Backdrop has improved the function. And here's where my stupidity is going to show, because you're going to probably be able to tell me it's real easy to do. I just haven't found it yet. But the functional behavior of the layouts in terms, they've been improved because they're really following suit with CSS grids, but they're not executing it so easily that I can actually make it behave the way I want to. So there's some quirk in there that is not readily apparent to me yet. And the default way in which Backdrop uses the layouts is limited, and it only actually behaves in two presentations, widescreen and narrow single column. Whereas as soon as you get beyond, well, 2 or 3 elements in a row, you can start to imagine other behaviors, like a 3-phase behavior, where you have wide multi-strip, and then you have narrower column strips, and then you have the narrowest single column strip. And because you're using CSS grids, flexible as they are, it has the no wrap capability. So you could have anything you want, and you can have the percentage set to whatever you want, and then as you narrow it down, it can just flip them down and have multiple rows. And then if you're as smart as mustard seed, you can make it so the last one, if it's only got 2, is in the center. So it's almost there.
So,
right?
so I think
Yeah,
what you're looking
exactly.
for.
Oh, go ahead, Joseph. I was just gonna jump in
Okay.
on.
Yeah, so I think what you're looking for is actually you want to create layout templates, because that allows you to define custom grids and specify exactly where you want them to break and when. The default grids in Backdrop are actually not using CSS grid. They're using the Bootstrap grid system, which is, I think, is based on Flexbox under the hood.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, maybe it's a good point to differentiate between layouts and layout templates. So the layouts is the things that you build in the UI, in the admin UI, and you need, in order to do that, as part of doing that, you need layout templates, and the layout templates are what specify the available regions and how these behave. So the layout is nothing more than configuration that says that I'm using this template that has whatever regions it has, and you can change them and you can make custom things, layout templates of that. And then it holds all the information with regards to which region holds which block and what visibility conditions and who can see what, basically. So that's another point that needs to be made. And the reason why I'm bringing it up is because of naming, because naming things is hard. We've made a mistake, I should say, or I don't know. It's something that we didn't think of when we started building layouts in Backdrop, and then it came to bite us. So we had themes from Drupal and modules, and then we had this new thing that was layouts. So we started calling things layouts when we should have been calling them layout templates. So what you find now in Contribland And in core, called layouts that you enable or disable or you make available are actually layout templates. And I know this sounds already confusing, but I hope that it makes sense easy. Did what I'm saying make sense?
Sorry, I unmuted. Yeah, it sort of makes sense, but I think what it is maybe, again, forgive me if I'm looking at things rather simplistically, but it seems like all of the behavior probably not, but at least a starting point is if you think of a single strip, right? So many layouts gives you that, right? So if you use a single strip and you add blocks to it, and then you have it behaving in an ordinary flex grid manner with wrap on and a percentage, and then you end up with this kind of weird syntax that shows up on my developer. It's like 3 parameters, flex 0%, and it behaves exactly as you want, right? But heaven help me if I can find the right class to apply that or element to apply that to. Now, if you can do that on a single strip mini layout and it behaves that easily, then imagine what you could do if you then stacked another single strip or another this, or, and built your layout as comprised of sections. I don't know if that's how you do it, but
that's what the layout templates do. So a layout template is essentially you're rebuilding what in Drupal 7 was your page.tpl.php file. But you're saying like, okay, here's a, one with a left sidebar and like 6 stacked things on the right. And then you have this other one that's just like this super crazy grid. All of those different instances where on different pages, you need to have your layout be different. You build a layout template, and then you're going to use that when you build your layout. So you're essentially creating the template file that is going to be associated with which blocks go in which places. And you're right that like using the core layouts, the 10 layouts that come from Drupal core, these are not layout templates that you've built in the user interface that you can add classes to. These are HTML templates that have been in Backdrop long before we had that ability. And they don't have configuration options for where to put the classes that you're trying to put on them. And what's in core is supposed to apply to 80% of people running Backdrop. And there are going to be, or 80% of the instances in which you're using it, or I don't know. But there are always going to be cases where you want 5 columns across and you want that bottom one to float in certain scenarios. And we can't account for 100% of cases without making core really bloated and interfaces more confusing than necessary. And so what we did is with those default 10 layouts, we made them as simple as we could to meet that 80% use case. And as soon as you have a use case that doesn't match that, you need to either switch over to building your own layout template, which you do build 1 row at a time, and you can configure out how you want to have that handled. Or you can write your own HTML file that defines those regions in any way that you want to have them defined. So we sort of try, and this is all over Backdrop, you see the same thing. The user interface that's there, that's provided by core, should be an 80% user interface. And as soon as you want to do that really cool thing that Mustard Seed is doing, you're going to have to go outside of what's provided in core alone.
Right,
maybe at this point, while you were speaking, I spun up a demo site, and what we are saying might be confusing to people watching this video. So it might be a good idea to share my screen and actually show the things that we are talking about. So if you can bear with me, just.
But before you do that, let me just have one second here, because it seems to me that when I'm new to Backdrop, which I am, as you know, the thing that's striking about it is that the model you've created with this 80% use case is actually more than that. Because as soon as you add mini layouts to it, even at a simple point, just to kind of spruce up that one little piece that you want trying to do, you've almost got exactly what you want, right? So you don't have to change everything else. You can just simply add this to it, and and it's got like mini layouts has also, I haven't even got there to look at it. It's got the ability to do a vertical or horizontal presentation. And if it has the ability for the Flex CSS to be added, then I don't need any of Zen grids or SAS or any of that. Well, SAS for colors or whatever, but not for gridding.
Yeah, but so when you add mini layouts, that's the piece that like you needed because you don't fit in the 80%. So I feel like everything you need is there in the tools that we have. They're just not all in core. Like in core, we only provide the 80%. But as soon as you start adding mini layouts or display suite or Zen grids, like that's all that extra 20% of getting you from what you almost have to what you almost have what you want to get you to what you want. Go ahead, Irina, and then let's let Greg share.
Easy. I think that concept of layouts works really well. It does have a little bit of learning curve. It's where I had the only hiccup that I had where I had to spend a little bit more time trying to figure out things. But once you figure it out, things work much easier, and separation of blocks. So the separation, this layout layer is kind of consistent with what's happening right now with all the page builders and site builders. So there's like what is happening, the general trend in CMS is lots of people want to have more flexibility where it's not exactly clear whether they should have it or not. But because they want it, they want this layout, like, so the layout builder is something that is everywhere, all over the place in CMSs these days. And we deal with this with different levels of success because people use it and then they complain that things don't look the way they want because they put margins and padding in one place, like one size, and then another place in a different size, and they complain that template doesn't work. But without the layout builder, you also are more limited. So I think that if you want to, like, I think that's my understanding where you're like, how do we deal with layouts? Is that right? Or did I anywhere close?
Sorry, who's that question directed at?
Easy.
You.
Easy. Easy. Did you address the topic that you are trying to resolve in the more general way, or did I make it more confusing?
I don't know if I want the layout builder to do more for me. If it's already done for me, that's always great. But I don't mind trying to figure out how to do it a bit. But it has been a hang up because, it's like trying to decide, I was using the Zen theme, right, before, coming from Zen in Drupal 7 to Backdrop. But, and then I realized within Backdrop is you don't really need very much in a theme to actually get something working. But then when you start to look at the responsive grid behavior, that's when I had to kind of get into the understanding the layouts and how they're being built and the flex and how to call that. And that's been a little bit more challenging for me and seems to be holding things up. It seems like those are the two things I need. I need the skin look and I need the function presentation so that it's responsive the way I want. Everything else is modules, configuration, are all standard Drupal backdrop stuff. But those are the two immediate to get launch of site I need.
Yeah, and that like more complicated responsive behavior it's just a complicated problem to solve, like trying to figure out exactly where you want your stuff to go and how to make your site do it. And so we sort of did that for you on those 10 layouts that come with core, but you have to accept the way it responds in order to use those. And when you want to change that, you really need to like learn and understand grids in general. And you could choose to do it with Zen grids, you could choose to do it with Bootstrap grids, you could like there's so many ways that people could do that it's really hard for us to make assumptions on how we could provide that functionality for you. Because maybe what you want that last fifth column to do is different from what Irina wants that last fifth column to do. And in order to support all of the possibilities, the user interface for that just gets overly complicated. And one of our primary goals is to try and keep it a really user-friendly tool. And one of the main ways we can do that is by not overcomplicating the questions that people need to answer in order to get sort of a minimum viable product out. I agree, though, that it's a super powerful tool that almost gets you there. And that almost is definitely going to be frustrating.
Again, I may be missing the point here, but it seems to me that I've felt the same way. Okay, I have to go up this steep learning curve to understand how to do these layout things. And then when I saw in developer tools that one line that allowed me to just flex 0% and I had the behavior. So it's like it's already built in there somewhere. It's just not exposed.
Yeah, the whole grid system is included in core. So if you know how to use the Bootstrap grid system, you can find the right places and add the right classes and it will work. But that's the learning curve, is like you have to know how to use the Bootstrap grid system in order to get that class in the right place. And sometimes that means adding it to something that's already there on your site. Sometimes it means rebuilding that entire layout in a way that you can get the row where you want it and the way you can get the class where you want it. And we can't know all of the infinite ways that people may want to do that.
Yeah.
So it might be
it a little bit like a programmer. I understand, but I think once a programmer gets in there and squeezes it around a bit, you end up with this UI that you can just kind of pop something into and bingo, it's going to work with very little theming. Like
what you want is a little thing in the UI because you only have one problem to solve. But we can't only ask that one question, right? Like what you want is one of an
developer
infinite number of
documentation.
Possibilities on Zen grids.
Yeah.
No, what Izzy
We
wants,
can do that.
what Izzy wants is a how to map a Bootstrap grid feature into a layout template.
Yeah, maybe.
Okay.
We're running out of time here. I'd like to
Just
see
really quickly, I would like to show this just to
yeah.
try
I'm
to
gonna
clear things up.
I'm going to suggest
Sorry?
that Izzy bring his specific problem to an office
Office
hour
hours.
where we can talk about it and like address your specific use case. Go ahead. Sure, Craig.
But so here's my understanding of what the goal was, right? So Drupal had modules which we call functionality now, and these are things that change, add functionality to your site that doesn't come with core. And then Drupal 7 had themes, which we call it here appearance, but it's still the themes that controlled how the site looked and also controlled the regions where you put things, right? It was one in a single place. So what we've done in Backdrop is we kept the themes in control of how the site, the aesthetics of the site looks, like the fonts and the colors and so on, and it's the same. But when it comes to placing blocks, we move that functionality under structure and then layouts. So the layouts is the configuration that holds holds information of where blocks are sitting in which regions and who can see what in which situations. Right. The fact that you can see regions here, like representations of regions, doesn't mean that a layout is actually the thing that provides the regions, right? And this is the confusing bit. What provides the regions is the layout templates, right? And we have some layout templates that are being provided by core, and they're here, right? These are the templates that you can use in order to build layouts. And then if these are not enough and you need to do something more complicated, more advanced, then you have a couple of options, a few options, right? You can go in Contrib, in the same way that you install modules, you can find layouts that other people have built. There might be a layout that is using Zen or something else already, right? Or you can build your own, because this is in Contrib, right? And on top of those two options, we also added this, which is basically if you're not a developer and you cannot build what you're after in code, you can actually build it with a UI, right? And this is what we call flexible layout templates. Have you been through this, Easy? Have you checked this out?
Yeah, I have been in there, but I may only be scratching the surface and haven't put all the pieces together.
So for your benefit and those that will be watching the video, what this functionality here allows you to do is, without touching any code, it allows you to build something like this that will be added here. So that's what it does. It allows you to build one such thing here that you can name it whatever you want to name it, and you can choose what regions it will have. I'll really quickly show the default, so I'll give it a name.
Greg,
Test.
Greg, can you also do a quick demo of how to install existing templates that are uploaded
Sure.
on?
Sure. So yeah, so this is where you get a little bit more advanced. So if the layout templates that come with core, they don't have the regions that you want, you need something tweaked, right? As I said, you have the option to either build your own in code or come here and say, all right, I want 3 horizontal regions, and the middle one, if I go and configure it, I want it to be, you go into the regions, sorry. Where did I go? There you go. I was missing that. And then you can say, I want 2 columns or 3 columns or 4 columns or whatever, and then say I need this style here, whatever. And then what used to be a single region, sorry. Yeah, whatever, I'll call it something else, sorry. Right, so I've added where there used to be a single region that I can place blocks. Now there's multiple, and you can change those, and you can add more rows. So I have 3 rows here. So you basically have a UI for building a template. And then once you save this, once I save this layout template, right? If I go back to the layout templates list, then here it is. This is what I have created. So these things here, you cannot change the regions that they provide, and you cannot change the CSS, the grid system that they're using, right? Nor can you do that here. So if you want to do something custom and adhere to something like Zen or what else, then you would have to do that in code. That's my understanding. You would have to create a template that relies on Zen, that provides the regions that you want. And then once you have those templates, you can go to the layouts page and say, I want to create a new layout. And all right, what regions do you want to choose now? And I can say, I want to choose that custom thing that I built here. And the same way that I have the core templates and the custom one that I've added here, this is the request that Irina made. You can go here and actually install one of the ready-made in Contrib, right? If you don't want to build the thing yourself, the community has built some of them. So same way that you install themes and themes and modules in Backdrop, you can install layout templates, right? So once I install this layout template here, what happens is if I go to my layout templates, I will now find a new template that is provided by this Contrib layout template set. Does that make sense or complicate things?
For me, it makes sense, and I have been in some of this. The thing is that you're just so close. Like when you add that test layout template, and you change the regions so that you had a region with extra blocks there. You've created that column structure. You are so close, but now you still have to determine the behavior of that in a grid. And like you say, maybe that requires a bit of extra code.
Or you can add classes here. And then
the trick is knowing which class to add to which row or to the block. And so Joseph dropped that link to that documentation in the chat for Bootstrap Grid. And that's the learning curve part.
Yeah. I think this is, we need a specific use case, and we need something like office hours where we can, some people who've done this stuff before can show you what we've done and or learn more from your use case, you know, what the needs are. But we're really out of time here.
Yes,
We
unfortunately.
we moved from porting Drupal 7 themes to Backdrop to a primer in layouts.
But what's necessary if you're trying to port your
Yes,
themes to
exactly.
Backdrop. So yeah, I think it's fine.
Good.
Can
Is there any
I
final
share two?
statements? Yeah, go ahead.
I want to share two links for documentation. One of them is the D7 compatible theme, and on the front page there, it lists all of the changes that the theme includes. Those are things that it's restored from Drupal 7. That could be useful if your theme is doing one of those things. And then this is the documentation for working through all of the code sort of one file at a time in your existing theme and trying to get them into a good format for Backdrop. Also, there's one thing I wanted to add about themes is that the D7 compatible theme works if you have a custom theme that's not a sub theme of Omega or sub theme of Zen. I haven't tried it as requiring it as like a base theme of Drupal 7 Zen. I imagine that's going to require a lot more configuration because you now have to not only restore it to the way Zen wants it, but also to the way that Drupal 7 wanted it. And I do envision that these things will exist, especially for Omega, which I know is a super popular theme in Drupal 7. I'm thinking that'll either be like a separate theme that'll be like Drupal 7 compatible Omega that you can add on that will add all that additional stuff so that it doesn't have to be in the theme for people who aren't using Omega. But I am interested in working on that. And I do have a couple of projects coming up early next year where I'll be working on that. So if anyone else wants to be working on it at the same time, maybe we can collaborate and try and make that easier for others.
Sorry, Jen, are you saying that if we were to make the life easier for people using Omega, we would have to create a contrib theme that is a sub theme of the Drupal 7 compatibility thing? On top of that,
I don't know exactly how it's going to fit together yet. It might be
like require the D7 compatibility thing so that it doesn't redo the things that the D7 thing.
Yeah.
So
I don't know yet. I was thinking it would be, but then what you would have is you would have Drupal 7 compatible Omega, and your theme, and now you're like 4 themes deep, and that might not be a good idea. So we'll have to see how that goes. It might just be like a copy of D7 compatible that includes some type of Git fork clone repo thing. I don't know. We'll have to figure it out.
Okay. So I'd like to just wrap up, summarize this discussion. We can carry on some of it afterwards or maybe into the dev meeting, especially the parts about how to improve it. Jen, can you just, so the D7 compatible theme right now is you've used it several times.
Yeah.
And you think that it is a viable option for people that want to kind of keep a static, a site that's not going a lot of development.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. If you are just trying to preserve an existing Drupal site without a lot of ongoing development, and that Drupal site is not running off of a base theme like Omega or Zen, if it just has a custom theme, you just take that custom theme and say, my base theme is now Drupal 7 compatible, and all of the template files that you've modified for Drupal 7 should work for Backdrop, with the exception of page, which you'll need to rename or remove or rework or what have you.
Sort of a final question, I think, is what is the future of the Drupal? Is there room for improvements there? Or yeah. Okay.
Definitely. So I've sort of accounted for the majority use cases, but there are going to be other things that theme should probably still support that I haven't encountered in the sites that I've worked on so far. And I would like to see more of that go in there. So if you have use cases that are coming up where it's not working, open an issue in the queue, and we can figure out whether it's unique to you or something that should be included in the theme. And similarly, if you have a theme that is running off of a base theme and you want Drupal 7 compatibility for that theme, open an issue and we can work through what we can do to make it better for that base theme.
Let's wrap up this meeting. Thank you, everybody. And we'll be moving on to our weekly dev meeting in a few minutes. Maybe or maybe not. We'll see what Nate says. We can carry over some of this discussion. Bye, everybody.